Urf, ahsan. What does urf mean? Customs, people's norms and their traditions. If this is the way that people transact, right? They have a certain expression that they use when it comes to transacting. We can go off of this, عادي. Because the Shari', even though the Shafi'ites might differ, the Shari' didn't really specify exactly how the transaction should be assembled. Am I correct to say that? How would you respond, Ya Abdullah? No, forget about my madhab. I'm now enforcing my view onto you. In order for you to say, okay, I'm not going to take this, you have to give me something that is substantial. Huh? Like, you guys with me? How would you respond to that? But if I give it to him and then he takes it, isn't this a form of rida, a form of satisfaction? Unless, of course, he starts screaming and saying, no, I don't want to sell it to you. He would have to speak in order to refuse this transaction. Now tell me, go on, give me a ma'qul, a logical response to this. So if I now make the exchange, I put money on the table and then he takes it, doesn't that show a willingness now to go ahead with this transaction? No, he's there. Sorry, I just wanted to have a go at the Shafi'i here. Right? The Shafi'i, they say, it is limited to the utterance, right? You have to. So all of the transactions that you do, you always go to the shopkeeper and say, look, I want to buy this. Or he says to you, I'm selling this to you, and then you say, I accept. What did Mutakhirun say? He goes back to Urf. So why are we discussing it? Do you agree with me, basically? الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلي وسلم على المبعوث رحمة للعالمين بعثه الله شاهدا ومبشرا ونذيرا وداعيا الى الله بإذنه وسراجا منيرا. So last week, my car. What car is it? BD10 NOJ. BD10 NOJ. It's being live streamed now, so you have been shamed forever. Unless Muhammad decides to take the video down or cut it out. طيب. Let's get straight into it now, inshallah ta'ala. We mentioned last week that there are pillars and likewise conditions. Can we quickly recap, inshallah ta'ala, for those who are listening? What were the pillars? Or how many pillars were there? 3. What was the first pillar? Al-Aqid. Who's the Aqid? The buyer and the seller. And then each one of them has conditions. Isn't it so? Which we will come into, inshallah ta'ala. Number 2 is what? The Ma'qud, which is that which is being bought and that which is being used now to purchase this item. Agreed? And then you have the sigha, the expression. Whether it is done through an utterance or is done via action, the transaction becomes a symbol. طيب. Who can give me some of the conditions, brothers? Some of the conditions that we took last week. The amount needs to be specified. The amount needs to be specified. This would be referred to as? What was the Arabic term that we used? Al-Mabi'. Sahih? And what are the other conditions? The buyer must be competent. Right? Somebody who is mukallaf, someone who is religiously obliged. And that which would come under it is him being competent, having reached the age of puberty, and what else? He has to be sane. Agreed? طيب, what are the other conditions? He needs to be the owner of this item. What else? That would basically come under being religiously obliged. It needs to be halal. Ahsant, mubah. Can't be selling something that is impermissible. If you end up selling something that's impermissible, what's the ruling of that? Is that a valid transaction? Hada. What else? One that you're mentioning earlier. Ar-rida, ahsant. Both the buyer and the seller, they have to be willingly transacting. They have to both be willingly transacting. Does that make sense? You can't force somebody now to transact. That wouldn't be a valid transaction unless it is the judge that is now forcing him to sell his assets. There are exemptions. Does that make sense? Like what else?
Being able to hand over that merchant.
أحسن قدرة على التسليم. Right? Being able to hand over that item. If I tell you something and look, I have a car, remember the car that I always pick you up with? The nice BMW? He takes the money and then he says, okay, look, it got lost, you need to go and find it. Is that a valid transaction? I'm selling you something that I don't have in my possession. Somebody stole it, and I've sold it to you. I might even sell it to you for a price that is far less than it's actually worth. Like the brother mentioned last week. What did he mention? Do you guys remember? About the bike. The bike may cost, let's say, £1,000 and somebody's selling it to you for £100. Jackpot. Would you buy it? Very, very highly likely that it is stolen. Wait. We also mentioned what? العلم بالثمن والمبيع. العلم بالثمن والمبيع. The amount needs to be specified. And the item that is being sold needs to also be specified. This is very, very important. Imagine I sell you an item for everything that's inside of your pocket, and then you say, yes. And then when we check his pocket, there's nothing in there. Or there's maybe, £5 in there, and then you sold this iPhone that is worth, £500 for that which is inside of his pocket. يتضرر? Of course, it becomes extremely harmful. Is that clear, brothers and sisters? These are some of the conditions. Like, moving on swiftly, we reached the line of poetry when he said, وَاغْتَفِرُوا وَاغْتَفَرُوا جَهَالَةً فِي سُورَةٍ أو اغتفروا جهالة في سورة تابع أو حاجة أو يسيرة. We mentioned 3 fundamental or foundational aspects that make a transaction haram. Do you guys remember what the 3 was? Huh? How do you translate interest into Arabic? Riba. Even then, the English language doesn't really give it its due justice. Riba. What was the other one? Gharar. Al-gharar. Ahsant. Good. Al-gharar. What does gharar mean? Ambiguity. Right? Ambiguity or something being unknown. When there is that level of ambiguity that is harmful or that is going to impact or influence or affect this transaction, the Shari has made it what? Prohibited. Why has he made it prohibited? When there is an ambiguity, brothers, in a transaction that affects this, right? That affects this deal that is taking place. You partially know and you partially don't know exactly what you're buying. Because it is not being stated exactly what this product is. Isn't this eventually going to bring about some sort of shock to the person who's buying it? Right? There has to be clarity and surety with that which you are buying. It will eventually end up also affecting the spirit of the brotherhood. What was the third? Darar. Right? Causing harm to that individual. Causing harm to that individual. or eaten that individual's wealth unjustly. Right? طيب. I'm going to sell Abdullahi here my iPhone. You can see my iPhone, right? What color is my iPhone? What color is my iPhone, guys? Huh? What did you say? What do you guys think? It's silver. Huh? طيب. Can't use the SIM cards. طيب. It's very clear what I'm saying to you, صح? Is there a level of ambiguity that influences the transaction upon me sending you this phone that's inside of my hand? Huh? Yeah, you can check it if it works. Works. Everyone see it? Works. Perfectly fine. No issues with it. What else?
Why could they leave the screen protector on? The screen is actually cracked.
Screen is actually cracked. No, but you're going to look at it. You're going to look at it. You're going to be touching it to see whether it works or not. Fine? Is there ambiguity? Then let me ask you guys a question. What about the battery? What about the color of the battery? Isn't there now a level of ambiguity there?
Well, it's even newer about that.
Huh?
That's the setting what another color the battery is in.
Question that we need to ask ourselves is this kind of ambiguity, is it going to impact this sale or this transaction in a negative way?
The color battery.
The calorie, is the color going to affect it?
No.
But the battery is, right? One of the questions you would ask is, and ايش لون البطارية يعني? What's the situation with the battery? Battery affects the the transaction. Would you guys agree with that?
Yeah.
Sometimes it gives you a battery, especially with these iPhones. Abdullahi loves his Samsung, so this is going to be like something that he, champions for, right? And cheers. Some of these iPhones, over time, it gets affected. The maximum that it charges to is maybe what, 80%, 90%. Wouldn't that now impact this transaction negatively, brothers? If I said to you that the battery is, let's just say, the maximum energy that it has is 80%, and it doesn't go over that, are you going to pay the same amount as a battery that goes up to 95% or 100%? What does he say here, my brothers and my sisters? This is very, very important. He says, وَاغْتَفَرُوا جَهَالَةً فِي صُورَةٍ تَابِعٍ أَوْ حَاجَةٍ أَوْ يَسِيرَةٍ. If there is a little amount of ambiguity, right? Here, يَسِيرَة أو حاجة. At times there's a need for this kind of situation, right? Or he says, تابع. Let's just say you're buying a she-camel, and the she-camel is pregnant. Do you know what's inside of her stomach? In that kind of situation, they say, التابع تابع وله حكم المتبوع. Right? How would you translate that? Abdullah. You have the asal. You are buying the she-camel. However, it comes with it something that is almost undetachable from it. Sahih? So the shari', because of that, he would overlook it. Likewise, when it comes to these phones, when it comes to certain fruits that we buy, the watermelon, can you see exactly what's inside of it? They'll even open it for you, right? But can you see what's beneath the surface? Yani there are certain things that becomes almost, difficult to really discover or find out. And the sharia doesn't make things difficult. Yani sharia, when I mean sharia, or when I say sharia, it means legislator. Doesn't make things difficult, it overlooks it. Right? If you want like a general principle with regards to what type of ambiguity will end up affecting this sale or this transaction, write this down. A type of ambiguity that is going to impact this sale negatively. The type of ambiguity that will impact the sale negatively. and the best Imam or Sheikh that spoke about this issue is An-Nawawi rahmatullahi alayhi in his Majmu'. Spoke about it in a lot of detail. There's a long discussion with regards to, okay, طيب, what is intended by ambiguity, al-gharar? To what extent, right? Perhaps we can go off with, at this moment in time, at this stage of our studies, a type of ambiguity that is going to affect the sale of this transaction negative. Let me give you guys another example. You're going to Umrah, and the travel agency says to you that I'm going to situate you in a 5-star hotel, but doesn't give you the exact details. Upon arriving in Mecca, the 5-star is 30 minutes away from the Haram. How do you feel, brother and sister? He's selling to you a 5-star package. And yes, he will place you in a 5-star hotel. That's where you will reside. However, it's 30 minutes from Haram. Does this kind of description affect the sale or this transaction negatively? Yes, without a shadow of a doubt. When you go to Mecca, being in close proximity to the Haram impacts the sale hugely. Right? I'm not going, like for myself, I'm not going to the Haram in order to stay in a nice hotel. Yeah, the nice hotel is nice, right? I'd love to be in the clock tower and close to the Haram. However, if I'm being put in a 5-star hotel that's 30 minutes away from the Haram, and there are additional costs, me going back and forth to the Haram, this is going to impact it. There's the level of ambiguity here. He needs to state what specification is this hotel. Even today, you find that the 5-star varies. Agree? For those who are into tourism and travel a lot, would you agree that the 5-star varies? So all of this information, my brothers and my sisters, in order to prevent discord, is right important to mention it. Right? Keep this in mind, because later on when we come to advanced transaction payments or advanced payment transactions, it's called the salam. You have to mention, right, the description of that which you are selling are going to be handing over later on, and it has to be daqiq, very, very accurate and precise. We'll come on to that. But this issue of al-gharar, brothers and sisters, very, very important. It prevents a lot of problems, arguments, discord that ends up occurring now between brothers and sisters, right? When it's not being made clear of exactly what you are selling to that individual. However, at times there is a level of ambiguity when it comes to a transaction that is overlooked. Like if it is small, right? Do you know what color your bed sheet is going to be when you go to the hotel? Things like that are overlooked. Does that make sense? The most important thing is that I know where it's going to be, the quality of this hotel. He's not putting me in an area that is completely run down. And all of this information is important to state to prevent one of the maqasid, the objectives. Or should I say, in order to meet one of the objectives. Then he says, وَقَصْدُنَا بِجَائِزِ التَّصَرُّفِ حُرٌّ رَشِيدٌ صِفْهُ بِالْمُكَلَّفِ. And then he says, what we intend by جائز التصرف. Remember, one of the conditions of buying and selling was him being جائز التصرف. What does جائز التصرف mean? What does جائز التصرف mean? These are one of the terms that we took. What does it mean? How do you translate it? جائز التصرف. Ahsan, someone who is allowed or permitted to administrate his wealth. Is everyone allowed to administrate their wealth, brothers? No. And we mentioned, right, conditions of someone who is allowed to administrate his wealth. What were some of the conditions? He's not somebody who is safi, foolish, if you translate that literally. Meaning someone who's competent. You give this individual £1,000, he's going to be sensible with that wealth. that you've just handed over to him. He's not going to spend £1,000, right, in the next 5 minutes, as some may do. This person is a safi. He's foolish. He's not competent. What else? He has to be a free man. What else? Huh? He has to have reached the age of puberty. Yani mukallaf, is religiously obliged, and that which comes under it is him being sane and also reach the age of puberty. So he just kind of like, elaborates on it over here. Then he said, وَمْنَعْ تَصَرُّفًا مَتَى مَا حُكِمَ بِحَجْرِ مُفْلِسٍ بِسُؤْلِ الْغُرَمَةِ. Pay attention now, my brothers and my sisters, yeah? Pay attention. Have you guys heard of something called interdiction? Some of you guys never been to court? Huh? An interdiction, my brothers and my sisters, is a legal process where a court is asked to determine from testimony and other evidences that are presented whether a person is able to consistently make decisions regarding his wealth or his property, right? Or whether he is able to communicate those decisions. Okay? If such findings are made, the court appoints someone now to make these decisions on his behalf. Okay? So you have a full interdiction and then you have a partial interdiction. Okay? You have a full one and then you also have a partial. I'm going to give you guys some examples, right? A full interdiction occurs when a court determines that an individual is completely incapable of administrating his wealth. The court passes that judgment, right? Or makes that decision now that this individual is not fit whatsoever. A limited or a partial interdiction, my brothers and my sisters, is a type of interdiction that occurs when a court determines that the individual is incapable of consistently making decisions about his property, about his wealth. It could be that this individual is able to make decisions with regards to his health, but when it comes to making decisions about his wealth, he's incapable. So this would be like a partial interdiction. Now to be a little bit more specific, my brothers and my sisters. Do you guys understand this concept now? Huh? You have a full interdiction and then you have what? A limited or a partial interdiction. In Arabic, you can translate it as al-hajar. Al-hajar. Arabic is just one word. In English, you have to mention all of this. Do you guys have any other way of maybe putting this across? Anyone want to maybe participate with regards to this? Any other word for interdiction, huh, Muhammad?
No.
Huh? Does interdiction make sense?
Yeah, when I googled it and we put legal process, that's exactly what they call it.
No.
Yeah.
In Islam, you have this as well. Like, so when it comes to someone being prevented from being able to administer his wealth, I'm going to now get into the fiqhi technical side of things, right? The fiqhi legalities. They split into two. You may want to write this down. Al-mamnu' min al-tasarrufi yanqasmu ila qismayn. Someone who is prevented from being able to administrate his wealth, you can maybe put it into two. Number one who is prevented from administrating his wealth due to that which serves his own interest. It is in his best interest for him to be prevented from being able to administrate his wealth. So it's protecting that person, right, who wants to spend his money. The second category is, my brothers, do what's in the best interest of the creditor. Who's the creditor? What's the difference between creditor and debtor? Creditor is the one who lends you that money. Abdullahi lends me £1,000, right? Then Ibrahim al-Qurashi, I go to him, because I know, mashallah, he's very wealthy. I ask him now to lend me £1,000, right? And then I go to Zayd Iqbal. Me and him live in the same area, and I say to him, look, I'll probably be able to get something. He knows where I live. Let me go and get another £1,000. And then I go somewhere else. Sami'ullah. Sami'ul Hasan, sorry. He gives me another 1,000. Allahu Akbar, 4,000. I'm doing great here. My brothers and my sisters, borrowing money can turn into a huge calamity for an individual. At times it becomes a sickness. Right? The Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam used to seek refuge from what? Nah, to be overpowered by debt. He used to make dua to Allah Azza wa Jal. He used to seek refuge from what? From being overpowered or overwhelmed with debt. A lot of the time, my brothers and my sisters, like when you really think about this, when an individual becomes so overwhelmed with debt and is now spiraled out of control, what does he end up doing, or how does he end up behaving? Suicide. He says suicide. Maybe so. He's not wrong. Right? Depression. But that which is worse than that, my brothers and my sisters, one now begins to lie to people. He starts engaging in what? Major sins. He may even start now taking out a riba-based loan in order to pay back his debt, and then he just drowns and drowns and drowns into debt. The asl when it comes to taking a loan is that it is permissible. There is a need. Right? However, if there's no need, my brothers and my sisters, if one advice that I can give you all is, live within your means. Live within your means. Your bank will send you lovely credit cards, brother. I'm not even going into the discussion as to whether you can use it or not. Forget that for a moment. As soon as you get the credit card, break it. Break it straight away and get rid of it. Learn to live within your means, my brothers and my sisters. Right? Whatever you have, live with that. You want something, save up for it. It'll take you a bit of time. Right? I'll tell you guys a story of someone who was transacting with phones, like he was buying and selling phones. And when he needed a bit of money, he started borrowing money. And then he realized, khalas, he's burnt all of his cards. No one's going to lend him money anymore. So he started making his proposal very, very lucrative to the people. Right? Because no one's going to lend him money, and he needs what? A cash injection. So he says to people, give me money, right? I'm going to use your money to buy a lot of phones, and then you'll be getting some unbelievable returns. Just a life lesson, my brothers and my sisters. When you are promised unbelievable returns, right? A lot of the time, there's something dodgy going on. Have you guys heard of Ponzi schemes? Some of you guys are smiling. Why? You guys have been bitten before. Ponzi schemes, brothers, wallahi, and sisters, extremely widespread. Extremely widespread. Right? I've seen at times the one who's running the Ponzi scheme is a Muslim. Right? And people are believing him, they're throwing crazy amounts of money at him. How a Ponzi scheme works, brothers and sisters, is you give me money, right? And I make you all of these promises that every month you'll be able to earn from £10,000, for example, 700, 800 pounds. That's a big percentage. That's a lot of money. They say on average, if you invest £10,000, yearly you might end up making that amount, like 7%, 8%. But to be making, £700, £600, £800 a month, that's like your rent over here in Leicester, sahih? Or has the cost of living gone up? Man, you've been away for 9 months. Unless you got in council house. Allahu Akbar. Point is, that's a lot of money. That is not normal, brothers. So what happens is every month he gives you 800 pounds, 700 pounds, making you believe that he is what? Making a lot of profits. He's taking 10,000 from Abdullahi, 10,000 from Zayd, 10,000 from Ibrahim, 10,000 Mahmoud, 10,000, right? And then you're just waiting anxiously, anticipating to make that money every month. The first paycheck comes through. Allahu Akbar. But before I tell my family and friends, let me just see another couple of months. Second month comes through. Third month. And you know what he's paying out of? He's paying out of the money that he collected from everyone else. And you're believing that he's making all this money. And then the third month kicks in. Abdullah goes and tells his whole family. Right? Too good to turn down. Everyone give me your money. And then invests it in there. Right? And then he works for a couple of months and then more people start coming in. Wallahi, there was this venture. Many people in Leicester, in London, other places, they all invested into it. There was even an app for it. And this app made it so much more convincing. They would open it every week for 5 minutes. Wallahi, brothers and sisters, I kid you not. Right? 1.8 million pounds would be invested in those 5 minutes. And it's happening on the app. The app will crash. Right? Until one day this individual was discovered that he was running a huge Ponzi scheme. طيب, how did this all start, my brothers and my sisters? How did this all start? What was the thing that I mentioned earlier? Before that, borrowing money and then more money and then more money. And then it leads to what? Lying. And then you're running this multi-million scheme that is a scam. Right? One is too good to be true, my brothers and my sisters. I don't want to break your hearts or be a hasid, or a hater, or some guy who doesn't want good for you. Take it from me, brothers and sisters. So anyways, I mentioned all of that, right? How did this all come about? Now, the court, right? Through this legal process, they carry out this interdiction of this individual, يحجر عليه, so no one else gives him money. No one else gives him money in order to protect the creditor, right? لمصلحة الغرماء. Does that make sense, my brothers and my sisters? So he says here, وَامْنَعْ تَصَرُّفًا مَتَى مَا حُكِمَ بِحَجْرِ مُفْلِسٍ بِسُؤْلِ الْغُرَمَاء. Now all of these creditors are in a situation, right? They are not thinking to themselves that all of these creditors, I need to make sure that I what? Get my share that I lent to him. It could be that he only has a little bit of money and then it gets distributed according to how much each individual gave him. So if somebody now lent this individual, let's just say £1 million, and he's only got 300,000 in his bank account, right? After the interdiction was carried out, was issued. And then there are all of these other creditors. This other guy gave $1 million, the other one gave $1 million. It gets, and somebody gave him, let's just say, what, 500,000? It varies, right? Someone gave him, what, 250,000? It basically gets, right, distributed accordingly to how much each individual lent to this individual. Does that make sense? No. Like then he goes on to say, and of course this individual now, khalas, is considered bankrupt. That's what muflis means. Right? That's what muflis means. He has a label on his forehead so that everyone knows and is protected from lending this individual money. Well, until everything is repaid after that, and then they give him some time and whatever have you. Yani muflis. He can't repay everybody back, then khalas. All of them are brought to court, right? They give their witness, and present their evidences as to why this individual is just, or his finances now are spiraling out of control, right? People are noticing it, and they're getting very, very worried. They take him to court, and then this interdiction is applied. Does that make sense? Any questions so far before I move on to the next part? It gets a little bit interesting. It's called Shuf'a, the law of preemption.
I have one.
Yeah, go on.
Here in the UK, if you go bankrupt, right? You go to court and then you get your debts settled, whatever, right? In Islam, does that concept exist, or are you owed for life?
No, خلاص يعني, if he has a certain amount now left, this gets distributed accordingly.
Yeah.
If he's bankrupt, what else can you do? You can't do anything with this individual. You go, and the Messenger talked about this. You go around to the shop, right? This individual who's bankrupt, he's got all of these products. If you find that which you lent to this individual, you can take it. Other than that, he has nothing else remaining.
If he finds wealth in the future, right? Are you supposed to go after him and take it back, or is it given?
Wallahi, I'm not sure, to be honest. Wallahi, I'm not sure. Yeah, but we'll keep that in mind. طيب. Any other questions, brothers and sisters?
They don't have any practice. Are you kidding? If you give certain credit, they don't want to see it.
Well, the banks over there, they have a nidam with regards to who and what they give to somebody who wants credit.
I mean, the credit is with that.
Yeah, they do it in some of the Islamic banks over there. Because no one wants to really, lose out, if that makes sense, right? So they have a way. These are all like mubah means, permissible means, for you to determine as to whether you will hand over something that belongs to you to this individual. طيب. Then he goes on to say, وَتَثْبُتُ الشُّفْعَةُ لِلَّذْبَاعِ شَرِيكُهُ نَصِيبَهُ الْمُشَاعَ. The law of preemption. Does anyone have an idea of what حق الشفعة means? Or what this concept actually is? حق الشفعة. It is basically, my brothers and my sisters, the purchase of something before it is offered to others. The purchase of something before it is offered to others. This is the right that the legislator has given, right, to someone who has become a business partner with somebody else. Okay? In Western law, they call it the right of first refusal. The right of first refusal. Do you guys have an idea of what it is? Let me give you guys an example. Me and Abdullah will go halves on a piece of land in Somalia. Right? We go halves on a piece of land. Okay? It hasn't been divided exactly which part of this land belongs to me. Right? A couple of days later, somebody comes to Abdullahi. Let's say Mahmoud comes to Abdullahi. MashaAllah, Mahmoud is extremely experienced with regards to the prices that go up and down when it comes to. He gives him an offer that he can't turn down. Right? He gives him an offer that he can't turn down. Abdullah goes and sells it to him without speaking to me. Is he allowed to do that? Now, me and Mahmoud, if he ends up selling his portion of this land, right, I have to start dealing with Mahmoud. And I might not like Mahmoud. Right? Mahmoud might be very difficult to have dealings with. So this is when the law of preemption, not Mahmoud, you're a good guy, don't worry. Right? But just generally speaking, right? The law of preemption. This is when حق الشفعة comes in handy. Does that make sense? You guys get the concept now? Him selling something without speaking to his business partner that he has bought this land with. Imagine, let me give you guys a very bad scenario. Imagine he ends up selling it to some scumbag who is horrible to deal with. I have to start dealing with him. Right? I have an issue. Does that make sense, my brothers and my sisters? So again here, the Sharia is protecting. Many of you guys have memorized the hadith in Arba'in al-Nawawiyya. What is it? لا ضرر ولا ضرار. لا ضرر ولا ضرار. How do you translate that? No harm or reciprocating harm. No harm or reciprocating harm. Yani Islam has come to protect humankind from being harmed or being a cause of others being harmed. Right? So this is one of the leading legal maxims of Sharia. And then you have many furu' examples that will fall under it. So now the concept of a shuf'a or haqq al-shuf'a, right, takes effect in all causes where the land has not been divided. But if the property has been divided and the roads have been laid out and there is, in this case, no preemption. Meaning, the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, brothers and sisters, this hadith is a key hadith or a foundation hadith in this chapter of the law of preemption. The Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam says, "Ash-shuf'atu fi kulli malin or fi kulli malin lam yuqsam." The law of preemption applies in every type of land or in everything, he said here, everything of wealth, right, that has not been divided. فإذا وقعت الحدود فيما يمكن وصرفت الطرق فلا شفع. And once the roads have now been laid out and it's been made clear what is belonging to everyone or what everyone's entitled to, in that case, you don't have the right to this law of preemption. Give you guys another example now. Right? Me and Abdullah, we go halves on some land. We go halves on some land. We split this land into half. This is mine, that is yours. Has the land been divided? What did the hadith say? الشفعة في كل مال لم يقسم. You have the right to buy something before it is offered to others as long as it's not divided. As long as it's not divided. Has this piece of land been divided? Are you guys with me so far? You're going to really have to conceptualize it with me. A lot of you brothers, you buy, when your parents or your grandparents, what they do is sometimes they go and buy land in different areas across the world. Agreed, Muhammad? Right? They'll go to Somalia, they'll go to Kenya. First they'll buy a piece of land and then eventually they'll build on it. Sometimes they go halves with one another. What is that? Before it's divided, this piece of land is referred as musha'. Right? It hasn't been divided exactly of what part of the land belongs to me and what part of the land belongs to Abdullah. Agreed? Right. Upon us buying this piece of land, what we do is we divide it. It's been divided. What the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, what did he say? فإذا وقعت الحدود فيما يعني المعنى فيما يمكن وصرفت الطرق فلا شفع. It has been outlined of what part belongs to me and what belongs to him. Then in that case, you don't have the right to this law of preemption. If I went to Mahmoud and I said, look, I have this land, do you want to buy it? Right? Do you want to buy it? And then he says, yes. Do I have to speak to Abdullah? Why? Why do I not have to speak to Abdullah in this scenario? Because the land has already been divided. It's been outlined what belongs to me and what belongs to him. Is that clear, my brothers and sisters? This is a very, very handy, right, subject for those, or a topic for those who buy aradi and go halves with others, and sometimes with more than one person. طيب? Let me give you guys another example. Me and Abdullah, we go to Middlesbrough. Why am I specifically mentioning Middlesbrough? طيب. Go specific to Middlesbrough, and we go halves on a house. £40,000 for a 3-bedroom house. It's a 4-bedroom house, 2 toilets. Me and him decide which 2 bedrooms belong to me and what 2 bedrooms belong to him. I say, you take these 2 and I'll take these 2. And there's 2 toilets, right? And let's just say there are 2 matbahs as well. 2 kitchens. Which is a bit rare. You guys know of a house that has 2 kitchens. Or we even can say that we're going to share the matbah, but put that to the side for a moment. We have 2 kitchens. I take one, he takes one. And now we've what? We've divided what belongs to him and what belongs to me. Like, I'm approached by Mahmoud, and then Mahmoud says to me, I want to buy your share of this house. Do I have to speak to Abdullah? Before I sell it to Mahmoud, even though the rooms have been divided, I know which part is mine and what part is his. What do you guys think? Is this the same as the land? What do you think? What was your name? Anas. What do you think, Anas? Huh? Anyone else?
You say you're sharing the kitchen.
No, let's just say you have 2 kitchens. You give him 1 kitchen, you give the other person that kitchen. I'm not going to mention Mahmoud, but let's just say some guy that is he's a criminal. And I sell it to this criminal. And then you have Abdullah Miskeen. Comes to the masjid all the time. Good lad. Right? He walks in and he sees this criminal sitting there with stacks of money, and then, what's this guy doing? Huh? And then he calls me. I was like, yeah, I sold it to this guy. Gave me all of the money. In fact, he gave me double. What do you guys think? Brothers,
Different situation.
pay attention, huh? There's a very key distinction. Key distinction. There are certain partnerships that take place when it comes to buying items, or when it comes to buying properties, right? That are unmovable, such as this house here. Because later on, I'm going to speak about that which is movable and that which is unmovable. Is a car movable? It's movable, sir. What about this property? Is it? Huh? Is it movable or unmovable? Huh? It's not movable. Land, is it movable or unmovable? Okay, the scholars, they make a distinction between that which is movable, manqul, wa ghayr manqul, and that which is unmovable. Generally speaking, this law of preemption applies to the unmovable things, such as house. The difference now between this property that me and Abdullah have gone halves on is that we share common things about this house, such as what? Front door. What's the difference now between this house and also the land? When it comes to the land, I can just put a wall there, sahih, and I take him out of the situation and make my own entrance. But because there are common features that both me and him have to share, we have to take into consideration who your business partner is going to be selling his share of the house to. Otherwise, this may eventually end up causing him somehow.
What if you say like one person is in the problem, another person is in the right?
And if they can find some sort of agreement where they can split it, right? And there is no sharing whatsoever. They can put a wall in between. Jay, no mushkil. But I gave you guys a specific scenario. Right? Because this common, right? This common feature that they both share, right? Remember before I told you guys, let's not be rigid in our understanding. This is an important, effective cause. Now when we look at other situations as well, it's an effective cause. It's an illah that is mu'athir. An effective cause here that later on can be found in other scenarios. When we have effective causes, whatever scenario or situation we find ourselves in, we always use that effective cause. Like yesterday, or not yesterday, but the week before, when they gave me that example of FIFA packs. We already spoke about what makes something permissible and what doesn't make it permissible, صح? And then whenever we find a scenario, we can just apply our rules that we've learned and our principles and then start applying it on different scenarios. Okay? This is why it's important now to study effective causes, why something has been made haram. Okay, now we have the reason for it. If we find that reason elsewhere, the same will apply. Are you guys with me? Is everybody getting that? Important, extremely, extremely, extremely important. So the effective cause here that there is a common feature that they both share. في منافع مشتركة بينهم. صحيح? Right? And then my brothers and my sisters, later on, okay, if you find that in a situation where they have this common feature, يعني منافع مشتركة, that neighbor of yours, and in this case Abdullahi, he would be entitled to that preemption, right? The right to buy before anyone else. Even the council, by the way, they have this, after you buy a council property, right? And you want to sell it after 5 years. They don't allow you to sell it after buying a council property until 5 years has gone past. Then they have the right to purchase it before you sell it to anyone else. But our Sharia states you have to be able to match that which that individual or that other person is offering. Okay? So Mahmoud comes to me and he says, look, I want your share of the house that you are, right, a partner with Abdullahi. How much you want to offer me, Mahmoud? I bought it for, let's just say, 50,000. And he paid the other 50,000. He goes, I'll give you 70,000. Great. Want to give me 70,000? I say to Abdullah, you have 70,000. He said, yes, I have it. He would what? Have the right to buy it before somebody else. Or before Mahmoud. But if Abdullah says, no, but I don't have it. No, are you ready to pay 70,000? If he's not ready to pay it, خلاص, his right to buy this property before everyone else has become non-existent because he doesn't have the money to pay. Does that make sense? Likewise here with the council, after 5 years, if I have an offer on the table, someone's willing to give X amount for that property, and then the council doesn't want to match it, خلاص, council's gone. But if the council is willing to match it, you will have to give it to them. It's a rule that they have. طيب, let's now move on. I'm going to come to you, yeah? Let's now move on to منقولات, movable objects. A car now. Me and Abdullah have gone halves on a car. Are we able to split the car into half and divide it and assign a part of it to him and to assign a part of it to myself? Can we do that? It's almost impossible. Does that make sense? So we are what? Mushtarak. There's a difference of opinion with regards to whether the law of preemption applies to movable objects. Non-movable objects, we've already spoken about it. Right? Majority of the scholars, they mention that this right of preemption applies in that situation. Then what about now when it comes to non-movable objects? Does it apply? Many of the scholars, they say no, but others, they say yes. And perhaps those who say yes, they have strong reasoning. And their claim is substantiated with a number of points. From these points that they mention is, and I think we can logically relate to that. Imagine you've gone halves, me and Abdullah have gone halves, and then I decide to go and sell this car to a drug dealer. What do you think? Huh? Or you mentioned bike the other day, huh? Hashim. You and your friend, you guys went on halves, buying a bike, right? And then the other half decides not to go and sell it to somebody else. Huh? He said, no, it's not happening. What do you guys think? Would the law of preemption apply in this situation? What was the effective cause that I mentioned earlier? It's going to come in extremely handy here. Huh? There are, منافع مشتركة. There are common features here that both benefit from, right? And you're going to have to deal with this drug dealer, which will perhaps bring you so many problems. So it only makes sense now to give this individual the right of preemption. Makes sense, brothers? So before you go and sell it to somebody else, you have to offer it to your partner that you bought this car with. Are you with me, Samir Hassan? I don't think you're with me. Did you understand the concept? Like, any questions so far? Yeah, without shadow. So we basically say movable and non-movable, right? Those who say when it comes to business and other aspects as well, they keep it general because of the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, الشفعة في كل مال. مال. الشفعة applies, or the preemption or the law of preemption is applicable now to every type of wealth. Anything that holds value. Does that make sense? Because we have the same effective cause that I mentioned. Right? Same effective cause. Right? Which is like a common denominator in all of these different cases in mathematical terms. Or common feature in all of these different scenarios and circumstances. Does that make sense? Imagine he ends up selling it to some loose cannon or somebody who is incompetent or somebody who behaves in an irresponsible way. Right? He may well be the cause of this business having a downfall. Isn't it so? Like, and then he goes on to say, we're nearly done this, inshallah. والمال ذو نفع مباح عين أقسامه والنفع ثم الدين. Right? He then says, والمال ذو نفع مباح عين أقسامه والنفع ثم الدين. He begins to speak about the compartments of wealth. What would be considered wealthy? Man, right? Something that is valuable. He mentions three things here. An item or entity, whatever you want to translate it as. An item now that is du naf'a, that holds value, and that's permissible. That's the first thing. He mentioned three things here. Because it comes in handy later on. What the Shaykh here does in this mandoma, he gives you foundations. This is why it's called al-asas foundation. So later on, you are able to understand other concepts of buying and selling. Okay? He is what? Building you a foundation. He's making you grounded. Okay? He says wealth now, you can put three concepts under it. Right? Something that is valuable, something that... No. ذو نفع مباح, an item here. When we say wealth, right? Wealth, what does wealth mean? Sorry, mal. What does mal mean? Mal means wealth. Right? What would be considered wealth? First one here, he mentions an item that, of course, is permissible and holds value. Let me ask you guys a question. Flies. Is it, if I want to start selling flies, mashi? All of the flies, or sarasir, and they're coming out in the summer. What does sarasir mean? Cockroaches. You guys struggling with cockroaches at the moment in time? giving us a hard time in the block. Imagine somebody decides to collect all of them. Okay, I'm going to start selling. Nah, it doesn't hold any value. Wallah, yeah. Huh? What do you do stuff with cockroaches? Huh? Oh, right? Flies now, do they hold value, guys? Doesn't. Right? And then he says, وَالنَّفْرُ ثُمَّ الدَّيْنُ. There is something else that is not an item but is valuable. Such as, does anybody know? Huh? Think. Huh? Huh? Labor.
There's also like a logo or a name of a company.
Trademark. That's what you're trying to say, right? Yeah. Trademarks. Isn't that something that is valuable? In fact, it can be, right? قيمتها قد تصل ملايين. You want a trademark. A lot of the time, investors, one of the first questions they ask you is, have you trademarked it? Or in America, what do they call it? You say, have you patented it? Not the way you guys use patent. Huh? No. A patent is called in America. واضح? Number 3, دين. A debt. If I say to you, look, أخي, that debt, right, belongs to me, you take over it. Have you now not, right, gained access to something that is valuable? That guy pays me every month. And for whatever reason, I say to you, khalas, you take over that day, it's yours. This is valuable. This is a type of wealth. Did we get the 3 things down? Later in, they'll come in extremely handy.
That's when you say debt.
Debt, you know. That's also something that would be considered wealth. Agreed? He said, وَشَرْطُ بَيْعِ دَيْنِهِ بِدَيْنِ قَبْضُكَ فِي الْمَجْلِسِ أَيِّ دَيْنِ. Selling a debt for debt. I'm going to give you guys that which is impermissible. Messenger sallallahu alayhi, even though the hadith is weak, but the scholars they agree with regard to the concept that is mentioned in this hadith. In fact, it is muttafaqun alayh. There's the unanimous agreement on it. Let me ask you guys a question, huh? Abdullah, he sells phones. He has the latest iPhone that he's selling. He says, come to the masjid at 5 p.m. and we'll conclude the transaction. Not into the masjid, of course. Like we come to the masjid, we pray, and we walk out. Because you can't. Can you sell, buy and sell in the masjid? Huh? Can you start recording videos promoting your business in the masjid, by the way? What do you guys think? I remember one time, subhanAllah, it happened to me. I was going on Umrah with some brothers, and then they brought the cameras inside of the masjid, and they started recording. Halfway through I was like, Habibi, what are we doing? Yajuz? Am I Yajuz? That's just a quick benefit. Sometimes people use the Masjid al-Nabawi, right, to sell their products. Like when you see the Masjid al-Nabawi and you're scrolling, people's hearts are connected to Masjid al-Nabawi, and then they stop, and then as if they're going to see the Imam reading something. No, it's you selling a product. Am I asrah? Like, me and Abdullah agreed that we're going to come to the masjid. He's going to sell me the iPhone. So we come, and then it's like, okay, let's go outside. We start walking around St. Matthew's. And he says to me, do you have the money? I was like, no, is it possible that I can pay you a week later? And he said, yeah, no problem. And he goes, I don't have the phone as well. I'll give it to you in 3 days. Can we now agree on this transaction? Yes, sir. Alhamdulillah. ليش؟ Huh? Sorry? Whether it's practiced or not, ما حكم هذا البيع? What's the ruling on this kind of transaction? أحسنت. Step for that. We took this in the car, right? Huh? That's where he remembers it from. They traveled with me to Birmingham. He remembers from there. One of the two things needs to be handed over in order for this transaction now to be valid. I'll say that again. Me and Abdullah have met up thinking that either I'm going to hand over the money or he's going to hand over the item. For whatever reason, he said to me, no, I don't have it on me, man. Like, I thought I'd just come anyway. I felt shy to tell you, right? I was going to take the money, but it was definitely going to be yours. I was going to hand it over to you in a couple of days' time. But I haven't handed it over, and he hasn't handed over the item. This is called what? If we go ahead with it, and we agree now that the product is mine, and that he's entitled to his money, this is bay'u dayn bid-dayn. Al-kali bil-kali. Does that make sense? My brother says it is impermissible. And you'll be surprised, it is very, very common. Very, very common. In order for us to be able to correct this kind of transaction, what would we need to do? Now, one of the two needs to be handed over. This is why he said, قَبْضُكَ فِي الْمَجْلِسِ أَيَّ دَيْنِ. Right? You have to take possession of one of the two. Either I have to give him the money and then he pays me, I'll say that again. I have to hand over the money to him and then he hands over the product in 2-3 days' time. Does that make sense? Or he gives me the phone and I give him the money in a week's time. Is everyone clear on that? It's a very important concept, brothers. We're not walking away from here unless we've understood this very, very well. Bay'u dayn bid-dayn. Take this from me, my brothers and my sisters. Many tujjar, businessmen at times operate this way. I'm going to ask somebody to repeat this. Go on, Ibrahim, repeat it. Actually, no, you, Ibrahim. Anas. Repeat. Give me a scenario now.
For example, I come to buy your car.
Mm-hmm.
We met up. You said I don't have the car, and I said I don't have the money. So, okay, car's yours. Give me the money later.
Son, here now the transaction has been assembled. It's his. Right? You can't go back on it because there is ijab and qabul. Right? He's initiated it. I've sold it to you and I've said accept it. Does that make sense? It's his. Remember, sigha, right? The expression, either utterance or action, right? He's now uttered it. Look, I've given it, I've accepted, khalas, I bought it from you. I've even signed the contract. That this car is mine, but he's going to hand it over to me tomorrow, and I'm going to give him the money in a week's time. Bay'u dayn bid-dayn. Bay'u dayn bid-dayn. Does that make sense? Everybody with me so far? Clear? Go on, explain it.
It's good what you said, but then say
No, forget about I want to articulate it.
why exactly
Go on, teach me.
so now what I was going to ask is, for example, a transaction come through and for a car, but then he can't hand over the car now and they can't hand over the money now, but then something can be given, for example, like he can give him the keys.
No, keys. You're handing over the keys. It's basically his, yeah. Class. Yeah.
What about like, but then the key is supposed to denote like a deposit, like some sort of deposit. Like you keep this until the transaction has been fulfilled. Is that permissible?
Sorry, say that again.
Like a deposit, like for example, whatever I have in my belongings, like I can give that to him, and then that kind of shows that the transaction has been. Like for example, if I'm not mistaken, there was like a story where a sword. One of the Sahabas gave a sword as a deposit for a later.
Basically, ensure that this is khalas now his. Let me get back to you. Muhammad, do you remember the question you asked
When?
earlier?
Oh, it was about when people go bankrupt, right?
Okay, take it.
I'll
Yeah,
put it
I'm just gonna. Yeah, inshallah. Can somebody repeat what I just said? You. Yes. Huh? You forgot. Are you with us? Yeah? Other go. Repeat the, conceptualize it for me.
Sit on the phone. You're making up the number from you sit on the phone. He doesn't have the phone on him. You don't have the cash. That's debt for debt. That's not allowed.
One of the two things needs to be handed over. Very, very good. طيب. طيب. Very, very quickly, brothers and sisters, yeah? These 3 lines of poetry and then we're done, inshallah. It says, بيع مبيع العين قبل القبض صح كذي الكتب وهذه الأرض. Okay? It's a bit controversial now here from the Hanabila. When it comes to the transaction being assembled without him handing over that item. Okay? Selling something without this product or this item being handed over. I'm nearly done, guys. Just give me 5 more minutes and I'm done. Okay? I'm in a shop. And he has all of the phones. Like this is a phone shop. And he has all the phones on the wall. You can see it. I want this. Right? I pay him the money, give him £500, and then he hands over the iPhone. Khalas, done, dusted. Anything wrong with that? Nothing wrong with that. I've given him the money, he's handed over the item. Right. What if now, my brothers and sisters, I give him the money, and this phone now hasn't been handed over to me yet? I've given the money and he said, Khalas, I've sold it to you. Would this now be considered a valid transaction? Without qabd, without it being handed over into my possession. What do you guys think? The Hanabila, the Hanbalites, they distinguish between that which is weighed and that which isn't. Pay attention now. You have apple here that is being sold, right? I'm in the market. I hand over the money. I hand over the money, and he says, I've sold you a kilo of apples. Here he mentioned that it has to be weighed. There is a khutwa idafiyya. It has to be weighed before it can be considered it being handed over into my possession. This is called qabd. Qabd is important. Qabd. How would you translate it, Abdullahi? To taking, right, possession of something. Are you guys with me? I gave you guys that scenario that everyone agrees on. We're in a phone shop. I give £500. He hands over the iPhone. Any issues with that? No issues with that. Now I'm giving you guys the example of a fruit shop. You go to Leicester Market, right? You give him the money and he says to you, okay, I've sold you now a kilo of apples. I've sold you a kilo of apples. أنتم معي? A kilo of apples. Can this now be considered mine? Has the transaction been assembled? Is it complete? No. Until he weighs it. Once he's weighed it, only then, right, it can be considered as my possession. واضح? Where the Hanbalites are different to others is items that are non-weighable, such as phones. When you go and buy a phone, do you weigh it, like this power bank? Did I have to wait? Did he have to get a weighing machine to weigh it before? Makil, by the way, there's a difference between makil and mawzun, but it's that which is measured. You can put it all under one another. Are you guys with me? Does the phone need to be weighed before it can be considered mine? Like he says to you, look, you give him 500 pounds, and before he hands over the phone, you say to him, look, keep it there. I'm going to go and move my data or move all of my photos onto another phone and I'll come back. Why does this come in handy? Right? Let's just say this individual died. Would that product now be considered as his or not? According to the Hanabala, that's considered his. Even if he hasn't handed it over to him. This is a little bit of a, Hanabala seem to be by themselves on this issue. But generally speaking, most of the other madhahib, they say that it has to be handed over to him. It has to come into his possession before he's allowed to do anything with it. Are you guys with me? Next week will be our last week, inshallah ta'ala. I'll go through a lot of that, which inshallah ta'ala will be extremely important for you all. Right? We're going to take riba. Please, brothers, every single one of you go and do research on riba. Riba can be split into two. The riba that runs in debt and the riba that runs in transactions. This is your homework. It will help you a lot to understand what I'm going to go through tomorrow. Keep saying tomorrow, next week. It'll be our final lesson. And then I might see you guys next year. Allahu A'lam, we're still alive. Are you brothers and sisters with me so far? Riba, when it comes to debt, that's pretty simple. Most of you guys don't really have an issue with that. Right? I lend you 10,000 pounds and then I request for you now to give me more. I request from you to give me more. Remember the example that I gave you guys before. Does it have to be money or can it also be something else? I want a 10,000 plus a Gucci bag. Is that allowed? But it's not money though. No, كل قرض جر منفعة. Every type of loan that has an additional something that is valuable that is returned back with it, it is riba. That's pretty clear. The Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, in the very well-known famous hadith, where he talked about 6 usurious items, that's what I call it. Gold with gold, silver with silver, wheat with wheat, dates with dates. And what else? Salt with salt. What was the 6th one? على كل حال. الذهب بالذهب والفضة بالفضة والملح بالملح والتمر بالتمر. على كل حال, there are 6 items that are mentioned in the hadith. I want you guys to figure out why these 6 have been counted as usurious items. Why, right, they are considered usurious items. Or the effective cause or the reasoning as to what these items have in common. Gold and silver, put that to one side. The other 4, what is the common feature in these 4 things? As to why it was made haram or counted as usurious items. Okay, that is the homework. Try to get some idea. You're probably going to be very confused looking into it. And what do you Shafi'i say? ثمنية ولا الطعم مع الوزن والطعم مع الكيل. صحيح? Okay, brothers and sisters, it'll come in extremely handy. Okay? And the last one will be our final class, inshallah. And brothers and sisters, let me give you guys some good news as well. Even if you don't fully understand what we've taken in these last 4 weeks, the fact that you've understood a bit of it, when you study at a later time these masail, these issues again, wallahi, you'll be 10 steps ahead of somebody who's completely unfamiliar with it. Last week I asked Anas, right, who studied some of these topics with Ustadh Liban. I said, going through it again, has it helped? He said, without a shadow of a doubt. That's what he said, right? The words. And I can testify to that as well. When I first studied Nahu, Arabic grammar, wallahi, I didn't know what day of the week it was. And then I studied again. And that's when everything started falling into perspective. And mashallah, that's not even the case with most of you guys. Most of you guys have understood a lot of stuff we've talked about. Agreed? No. You promise with me? If we've understood up until this point, we've accomplished a fair share of important aspects of buying and selling. And believe it or not, my brothers and my sisters, طلاب العلم, people who graduate after spending 4, 5 years or 6 years in Al-Medina, when it comes to a lot of these masail, they may find it extremely difficult to understand. So don't feel disheartened. If there is that which you didn't understand, perfectly normal. Yeah? Any questions, my brothers and my sisters? I'm going to take a couple and I have to go, inshallah ta'ala. Uncle, don't worry about it. Inshallah, I have a call. You need to anyway, inshallah.
You know, in the case of the baby, like someone.
Also, please, Muhammad, write down his question, yeah? Please, minutes.
Question? Sending the one earlier.
Yeah, no, exactly. Brothers, honestly, I'm benefiting immensely from you guys as well. When you guys tell me about FIFA packs, right? And Fortnite products that you guys buy, I actually wrote that down. I added it to my list of examples of gharar and selling or buying something that you don't really know what you're buying, right? I cheer for these examples that I receive because it makes things very relevant and so much more easy to understand, as opposed to if I just went through this theory side of things, right? That's why I tell brothers always write down the examples. When I teach usul al-fiqh, when I teach qawaid al-fiqhiyya, if you guys get a chance, listen to my 5 leading legal maxims that will change your life forever. I literally just filled with examples. It's on my YouTube channel, 3 hours. A lot of the talabat al-ilm that watched it, students who learned that watched it, they said they absolutely loved it. Why? Because of the examples. Makes it interesting, isn't it so? A lot of these examples that we use that are real life, contemporary examples that are relevant to our day-to-day dealings.
You know, you saw the actor professor. They said in the PA, just don't pay you. It is separate from the actor.
Yeah, that's a whole different situation now. You're gonna have to chase them up.
How quick do you think the actor back? Can you?
If you can ask them now to give the item back, Jay, that's the ideal thing. But a lot of the time, is it as simple as that? Or maybe he's paid you half. What, to take it away from him forcefully? It's his product now. But he has to give you you basically allowed for it to be paid back in installments or at a later date. And then for whatever reason, he couldn't. Right? If this is now taken to a sheikh or a qadi or whatever have you, he can judge for it now to be returned back to him. Does that make sense? If you can get to, or go through the legal process now.
Product has to be in possession of the seller. Then you said about debt. What if the money is given?
Yeah.
It's not, product's not in possession. Doesn't that contradict that?
Okay, طيب. I talked about 2 scenarios that are different from one another. What's the difference now between the example that I just mentioned, which is if one of the 2 have handed over that which is required of them now to hand over, because we have the price, the amount that is paid. Okay, and then you have the item. Look at it like this. You have the la'ak, the money, right? That is used to purchase this item. Right? If none of them are handed over, what is it referred as? Debt for debt. He says, I'll hand over the item to you in a week's time. This guy says, I'll hand over the money in 2 weeks. Can we consider this transaction as valid? No. This is called what? Debt. طيب. What if now the money has been handed over, but the item hasn't? Is that valid? According to what I mentioned earlier.
It's like a delivery.
Huh?
Isn't it like delivery?
Now I've basically paid the money and they're going to hand over the product.
One of them has been handed over to you.
One of them has been handed over. One of the two needs to be handed over. It needs to come into one of the parties' possession in order for it to be valid. Right? Does that make sense? No.
What about there's a method obviously, I think, buy now, pay later, zero interest. Where obviously they haven't given you a product yet and you're paying later with zero interest.
Isn't that debt promise?
That's not entirely true though, because there's a financial services intermediary who pays cash on your behalf.
So that's very different to what you just asked.
They give you the product.
You have to be very, very precise.
Yeah, and
Right.
it's sent right away.
Okay, so that middleman is actually paying, right, the amount of that product on your behalf. That's very different to what you just asked about.
I don't know about that.
Yeah, that's what Klarna is, right?
Klarna, I was exactly what I
And
said.
they charge the seller for capacity, but you will. Yeah.
Hmm.
And if you don't pay, they'll come to you for money. Not the same.
Now you said when you buy like apples, like 1 kilogram, yeah, you have to weigh it before. So let's say you go to a shop and you buy like 1 liter of water, you have to weigh that as well.
No.
But then it just gets like.
It's already been weighed for you and everything. Right.
It's like
But if it was, for example, in a tank, and then you're saying, look, I want, it would need to be right measured before it's actually sold to you. The things that are measured, that's the difference now between makil and also what? Mawzoon. Makil is that which is measured. Okay? This is now how many milliliters? 500 milliliters. Okay, 500 milliliters. If I put oil in there, or if I put melted silver in there, or if I put melted gold in there, or if I put honey in there, does it change the measurement of it? It's always going to be what? 500 milliliters. And this will come in handy in next lesson as well. Distinguishing between that which is mawzoon, that which is weighed, and that which is what? Measured. And then you have that which is counted. Such as what? What is normally counted? Pomegranate. Is pomegranate weighed? Generally speaking, in the time of the companions, it wasn't weighed. It was counted. We go with the measurements of the people of Medina and the people of Mecca. Right? There are certain things that are weighed, certain things that are measured, and certain things that are what? Counted. Does that make sense? Even now, watermelon, do you get it weighed, or do you normally just, I want 2 of them or 3 of them? You don't normally, in today's day and age. Huh? Do they weigh them?
You pick it up, but they charge for weight.
Okay, but that was not the case. Yani. Watermelon was counted, pomegranate was counted in the early times. No. But you guys get the difference now between that which is weighed and that which is measured. Measured, it's always going to be 500 milliliters. No matter what I put in here. The weight might be a little bit different, but the measurement is going to be the same. It took me a long time to figure it out when I was studying it. The difference between makil and mawzoon. Huh? Difference between that which is weighed and that which is what? Measured, which will come in handy a little bit later on. Last question. Allah, brothers, you guys have done well. May Allah bless you.
So last week you mentioned the narration of the gem by a fish that's still in the water, indicating the ambiguity of the item.
So it's not clear what you're buying,
Yeah. So
what you're paying for.
you're going towards the rule regarding debt for debt, and the person hands it on if it's similar to what the brother before, you've still got the ambiguity of the item until it's handed over to you. Does that
Okay, good. But when you are now buying something, right, he has to give you an accurate description of what you are buying. Does that make sense? So if it's like an iPhone 10 that is new, it's still boxed and everything, we have an idea what it is. You need to go online. Does that make sense? But when you now get access to it and it's completely different to what you agreed on, this is a type of tadlis. Then the whole concept of khiyar al-majlis, khiyar al-tadlis, all of that stuff will come in handy later on. What do they call it in English?
Oh no, it sounds clear.
Yani, when it comes to refunds and when it comes to, we'll come on to that inshallah ta'ala next lesson. We hope to cover that in our final lesson be the letter. Does that, you get what I'm saying? We will also come on to Salam. Salam is advanced payment transactions. Advanced payment transactions. Right? I need a cash injection. Right? I won't be able to do business unless I'm given a huge cash injection. Right? I agree with you. Give me this amount now, and I'll be able to hand over a product to you at a deferred time. It's deferred when I'm going to hand over that item to you. Like, what's the whole, when you think about it, you're getting it now for far less than what you would get it at maybe a later date. It's a handy type of transaction. Yeah, you basically buy it right now. You'll get it for so much more cheaper. But I need the cash injection. Give it to me, and then I want you to hand over those dates, right? Or hand over those phones when you pick it up maybe at a later time, right? And subhanAllah, this guy's made a lot of money. He'll be able to make huge profits on his buying and selling. I'll stop there inshallah ta'ala. I don't think you guys have any other questions, right? Because I need to jog. Yeah? صلى الله على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم سبحانك اللهم